Chapter 6. Come on, sweetie, Allison said as she gently wobbled Avery's shoulder. We need to get going. Ugh, Avery groaned. It's too early. It's nearly noon, Avery. Turning over in her blankets, Avery looked at her mother through droopy brown eyes. I don't want to go, Mom. What do you mean you don't want to go? Let me rephrase. Mom, I don't want to go. How's that? Raising her eyebrows at her daughter's sarcasm, Allison reached across the bed and opened the dusty aluminum blinds. All right, Miss Attitude. Thank you for sharing your opinion. Now it's time to get up. This is important. Expressionless and staring at the floor, Avery felt as though she were a prisoner in her own skin. Fine. How long do I have? 20 minutes. Then we have to leave. What do you want for breakfast? Oatmeal? I could throw some pancakes together real quick if you want. I'm not hungry. Allison shook her head as she turned to leave the room. Teenagers. Realizing she didn't have time for a shower, Avery threw on a white hoodie and some jeans she hadn't worn in a while. She was disappointed, however, to discover she couldn't get the pants to fasten without a struggle. Great. It was yet another reminder of her new life, the one she hadn't chosen, the life she would change if there were any possible way. Without saying a word to her mother, Avery walked past the kitchen where Allison was unloading the dishwasher and closed the front door behind her. Allison caught up with her a few minutes later. Well, aren't we just a bundle of joy this morning? Allison chimed as she opened the driver's side door of their gray clunker. Without looking up, Avery finished sending a text and slid the phone in her front hoodie pocket. Better buckle up, Allison insisted as she fastened her own seatbelt. Gotta keep that baby safe. Avery followed suit with a moan and then pulled her phone back out, pretending to be busy. Doing her best to ignore her daughter's discontent, Allison turned the key. The old engine wheezed and moaned for a moment before consenting to fire up. Well, Allison began as she backed down the cracked apartment driveway. I'm excited to find out if it's a boy or a girl. That makes one of us, then, Avery mumbled. Wow, this car sounds like it's going to die any second. Can we shoot for just a little less negativity, please? Without responding, Avery looked out the window and reflected on what a nightmare her life had become. Despite the loss of her father and her own bout with cancer at age 12, things had calmed down and were starting to look pretty hopeful. She had discovered her talent and love of sculpting and was headed for art school. Things were going to work out. Life was going to be good after all. Or so she had thought. Yes, Allison smiled as she stepped toward the receptionist desk. You should have an appointment for Avery Renshaw. Let's take a look here, came the reply. Ah, yes, Dr. Blair will be with you shortly. Please have a seat for a few minutes and we'll call you back. Thank you. Finding a chair next to some magazines, Allison watched the door for Avery, who entered a few minutes later with her eyes glued to her phone. Who are you talking to? Allison asked casually. Avery spent a moment finishing another text message before responding. Marnie. I thought you two weren't talking. What's she up to? We weren't, but we've talked it out. Things are fine. She wants to go see a movie tonight. You can go, but remember I need some help cleaning for a while today. You're going to make your pregnant daughter clean houses with you? Avery smirked. I don't know how I feel about that. Nice try, sweetheart. It's quick money. It will only take a couple hours. Whatever. Sure. The movie's at 7. We'll be done by then, right? Should be, yeah. While Allison flipped through a home decorating magazine, Avery sat quietly with her white hoodie drooping over her forehead. She couldn't help but notice she was easily the youngest person in the room. Most of the other women appeared to be in their late 20s to early 30s. As she looked about the room, Avery reflected on how she had never in a million years thought she would be sitting in an OB's waiting room. How she detested being here. A curly blonde-haired woman in a bright pink shirt had been eyeing Avery from across the room. Her expression seemed one of sympathy and concern. It was difficult for Avery not to feel judged, sitting in a place like this. She was piecing stories together in her own head about the others waiting to be seen. So why wouldn't they be doing the exact same thing about her? Of course they were. A pregnant teenager? Those girls were easy to figure out. She knew what they thought of her. If they had any idea. Avery, announced the female medical assistant in her mid-40s. A nervous wave swept over her as Avery stood. All eyes in the room now had permission to look directly at her, since she was the one being called back. She could almost feel them sizing her up as she and her mother followed the woman toward a narrow hallway. "All right," the woman said, directing Avery's attention to a scale. "Go ahead and step up there for a second." Great, Avery thought. "I'd really rather not, if that's all right." "Avery," Allison said in surprise, "please cooperate." Rolling her eyes, Avery stepped onto the digital scale. She'd gained 5 pounds since her accident. Whatever. Taking note of the numbers displayed on the screen, the attendant directed them into an adjacent room. "So I'm sure this is a clerical mistake," the attendant began. "But I'm showing this is your first appointment." "That's correct," Allison said. "It's a little complicated, but yes, it's the first one." "That works. Just making sure. So do you know about how far along you are?" "I think something around 20 weeks or so," Avery guessed. "Well, when was your last period?" Avery paused for a moment. "I've never actually had a period before." The attendant looked confused. "But I don't have any ovaries." Allison could tell the attendant was trying to make sense of what she was hearing, but without success. She had a rare form of ovarian cancer when she was in elementary school, and they had to be surgically removed. The woman opened her mouth to speak, but couldn't seem to formulate all the questions she wanted to ask. Gotcha. Well, moving on then. I'm going to take your blood pressure and ask you a few quick questions, and then Dr. Blair will be with you a few minutes after that." Avery's blood pressure had been normal, and she confirmed that she didn't smoke, drink alcohol, or indulge in hard drugs. "All right," the attendant continued as she made notes on her clipboard. "Are you in a monogamous relationship with the child's father?" "A what?" Avery queried, looking at her mother for assistance. "She's asking you if you're sexually involved with just the baby's father." Avery looked frustrated. "I'm not sexually active with anyone." "Okay, that works," the attendant responded. "Do you have any health concerns regarding the father's side of the family?" The three endured a moment of awkward silence while Avery tried to formulate her response. "Well, I do have one concern about the child's father." "And what is that?" "So she does know who he is?" Allison was eager to hear what her daughter had to say. "I'm concerned because I don't know who the child's father is. I don't know how on earth I'm going to raise a baby. I don't even know how I got pregnant. So there, those are my concerns. I could list a few others, but I'm sure your clipboard doesn't have much more room." Allison smiled nervously and slowly shifted her gaze from her daughter to the attendant, who listened intently with raised eyebrows. The medical assistant silently reflected on how these types of situations always made working for an OB rather interesting. "I see. This is clearly an extremely delicate situation. If the both of you can wait here, the doctor will be in momentarily. As the attendant closed the door, Avery looked at her mother in dismay. I don't want to be here, Mom. Oh, Avery, Allison sighed as she placed her arm around her daughter. I don't know what to say. Closing her eyes, Avery leaned her head back against the wall. I just want all of this to go away. I can't deal with this anymore. All we can do is just take it a day at a time. Allison tried to be consoling, but sensed she was falling short. I wish your father were here. Avery had just been thinking the same thing. Me too. He was always so much better with words than I am, Allison said. Avery's mind drifted to when she was 10 years old and about to jump off the high dive for the first time. Now I know you can do this, her father Richard had said. She would always remember those caring, enthusiastic blue eyes beaming at her. He pushed back his wet, wavy brown hair and continued. There's nothing to be afraid of, Aves. Just keep your arms to your side, take a deep breath, and step off the edge. Avery wanted to do it, but still wasn't convinced. Dad, I don't know. I don't think I can do it. It's too far. What if it hurts? Do you want to know the secret? I'll tell you if you really want to know. What is it? It's all in how you look at the water. What do you mean? Let me put it this way. When you were standing up there, did you view the water as your friend or your enemy? Avery hadn't been certain she knew what her dad was getting at, but she tried to go with it. My enemy, I guess. The water is going to catch you, Avery. It will always catch you. It's waiting just for you. It's excited for you to jump in and be its friend. Do you see what I mean? The concerned expression on her face had begun to give way to a smile. I think I get it, yeah. Richard then placed his large hands on her little shoulders. We don't run from our challenges in this family, Avery. We run towards them, okay? Okay. Climbing the ladder to the diving board felt so much different after her dad had explained it like that. She took each step with confidence and then walked calmly across the board with certainty and a sense of eager anticipation. And just like her father had promised, the free fall was brief and the water caught her, enveloping her in a blanket of safety. Emerging from the pool with a huge smile on her face, her ears were met with booming cheers and hoots from her father as he clapped. Nicely done, Aves, nicely done. Helping her to her feet as he climbed out of the pool. Richard embraced his daughter tightly. See, what did I tell you? I know, Dad, it really worked. Can I go again? Absolutely. Avery's body jerked with a start, her attention being brought back to her current surroundings. Dr. Blair had just entered the room and unintentionally slammed the door behind her. I'm so sorry to startle you like that, chuckled a casually dressed woman in her mid-50s. We haven't been in this particular office for very long, and I'm still getting used to these doors. Extending a strong, albeit slender hand to Avery and then Allison, she introduced herself. Hi, I'm Holly Blair. Are you the doctor? Avery asked. That's what they keep telling me. Dr. Blair smiled, revealing a striking smile with dazzling white teeth. And you must be Miss Avery Renshaw, is that right? Yes, pleased to meet you. Likewise. Avery was instantly put at ease by Dr. Blair's cheerful demeanor, and donning a snug black t-shirt and green scrubs, she came off very unimposing. And this must be Mom. Allison Stewart. Thank you for taking the time to see us today. Oh, stop it. The pleasure's all mine. Taking a seat in a black swivel chair by a small, wall-mounted computer, Dr. Blair pulled her shoulder-length silver hair into a ponytail. I apologize if I seem a little sleepy this afternoon. I ran a half marathon this morning and I don't think I was quite prepared enough for it. You were certainly more ambitious than most, Allison laughed. I probably couldn't run around the block if I wanted to. Oh, you could too, Dr. Blair insisted, as she briefly looked over the notes of her clipboard. So how was the drive-in for you two? Hopefully not too hectic. I slept through it, Avery admitted, so it was pretty nice. It wasn't bad, Allison explained. Took the central corridor from downtown. It's never too congested this time of day. Well, good. Very good. I suppose it's time to get to work then, right? So I'd like to clarify something before we proceed, just to err on the side of caution. By the sound of things, Avery, you're not certain who the child's father is, and you have no ovaries. Is that correct? Avery looked at the floor and sighed. Correct. I have no ovaries, and no, I don't know who the father is. No. With deep concern in her large hazel eyes, Dr. Blair looked at Allison for a moment and then back at Avery. So I just have to inquire about the obvious here. Now, you're 17, so I can't imagine why you would have been, but I still have to ask. Did you have any procedures performed that would artificially induce pregnancy? Avery laughed out loud. I apologize, but why on earth would I do that? Absolutely not, Allison insisted. We can't even afford to pay the rent, no. I apologize, Dr. Blair began. I just had to ask. It just seems like the only viable possibility. But I agree. I mean, there isn't a reputable organization in existence that would perform that procedure on a teenager, no question about it. Believe us, Allison said with wet eyes. We're more confused than you are. Of course, Dr. Blair conceded as she handed Allison a tissue box. I certainly don't want to make things any more uncomfortable than they no doubt already are. We appreciate that, Allison said, dabbing a tissue at her eyes. Now there's a comment here, Dr. Blair continued, that you've never had sex with anyone. Avery knew it sounded crazy. At least not that I have any memory of, anyway. She had quite the accident a couple of months ago, Allison explained, and it seems like some of her memory was impacted. And the reason I bring this up, Dr. Blair went on, is because depending on the nature of the event itself, it could have been traumatic enough to cause some severe psychological damage. Can I be completely open and frank with you, Avery? Despite the very personal nature of the conversation, Avery felt safe talking with this kind woman. Yes, please do. I have a couple of concerns. Now, it's clearly been some time since you learned you were pregnant, so I'm sure you've possibly explored this. But I'm worried you were forced into a sexual encounter. And I really hope we're not dealing with an ongoing abuse situation here. Tilting her gaze toward the floor for a moment, Allison put a hand on her forehead and took a deep breath. She had spent many a sleepless night worrying about the same thing. But Avery had given no information about it. Nothing whatsoever. Leaning forward in her chair, Allison looked with raised eyebrows at Avery, who sat still and expressionless. I know it must seem that way, Avery offered, but I really couldn't say. I mean, why can't you say, Avery? Dr. Blair pressed. I can tell you right now, if I had something to say, I would say it. Were you threatened at all? Avery could discern that Dr. Blair truly cared about her and wanted to help, but she simply had no memory of the event that led to her child's conception. I really don't have any information for you. I don't remember anything about it. I wish I did. I'm sorry. I apologize for being so avid, Dr. Blair continued, but it's my responsibility to act when something just doesn't look right to me. And this entire situation is a huge red flag. Will you promise me something, Avery? Yes, what? When you start to remember what happened, promise me you'll say something. You have people who care about you. Please don't keep any of the details a secret, okay? Shrugging her shoulders, Avery smiled and nodded her head. Okay. All right, thank you. And then one other thing before we move on. Have you been screened for sexually transmitted diseases? Yes, Allison confirmed. We had all of that done as soon as we learned she was pregnant. And she's free and clear in that department. Well, what a relief. At least you don't have that to worry about. That said, if you two fine women will follow me, we're going to head down the hall to have a much closer look at this baby. Following Dr. Blair to the end of the hall, Allison and Avery entered the last room on the right. Warmly ushering the two women inside, Dr. Blair closed the door behind her. Allow me to introduce you to Bryn. She's our ultrasound technician. A curly-haired brunette in her mid-30s stepped forward and shook both of their hands. Good afternoon, I'm Bryn. Nice to meet you, Avery smiled. Bryn, would you explain to our guests what you're going to be doing and how this all works? Certainly. In a moment, Avery, we're going to have you lay down right here. Bryn motioned to a comfortable-looking reclining chair, which was adjacent to a cart carrying sophisticated equipment. Then I'll be applying some of this blue gel to your abdomen, which will allow this instrument to see the fetus. Avery felt as though she were on a roller coaster and was slowly nearing the top of that first ascent. You look a bit nervous, Avery, Dr. Blair commented. I might be, Avery agreed. She noticed how sweaty her palms had become in the last 30 seconds. I just don't know if I'm ready to see the baby yet, that's all. Avery, why not? Allison queried. She constantly found herself striving to see things from her daughter's point of view, but sometimes she just wasn't sure where she was coming from. I guess I'm just in a little bit of denial, that's all. You certainly don't have to watch if you don't want to, Dr. Blair offered. This procedure simply allows us to take some accurate measurements, as well as detect crucial developmental abnormalities. It shouldn't take long. So Avery, if you would lie down right here, Bryn began, I'll grab this gel and we'll go ahead and get started, okay? Okay, Avery consented as she nestled onto the cushioned surface. This is going to feel a little cold at first, Bryn advised right before squeezing some of the gel onto Avery's distended belly. Whoa, Avery exclaimed, you're right about that. So just relax, Bryn continued. I'm going to take this sensor and move it around to access different angles. Grabbing a nearby chair, Allison took a seat next to her daughter. As Bryn worked the sensor and took measurements, Avery reached for her mother's hand and held it tight. With eyes glued to the monitor, Dr. Blair stood hip to hip with the technician, speaking softly while intermittently pointing at the screen. With eyes closed and gripping her mother's hand, Avery lay still while Allison failed to make any sense of the shapes coming in and out of focus on the computer display. As 10 minutes turned to 15 and 15 became 20, Allison began to be concerned. While it was true she'd never been through this experience herself, she could sense something was off. Trying to help Avery stay at ease, she switched to holding her daughter's hand with her left, and used her right hand to softly stroke Avery's long black hair. As she gazed at the young woman who lay beside her, she could hardly believe this was her daughter. Although she hadn't carried Avery in her own womb, she couldn't imagine loving her anymore if she had. Turning from the computer monitor to discuss the findings, Dr. Blair took a seat a meter away from the pair. Bren then took a moment to wipe the gel from Avery's belly and helped her sit up. "So Avery, Allison," Dr. Blair began with concerned eyes, "I have some crucial news for you." Allison's stomach was now in her throat as her premonitions began to materialize. "This is going to be quite a challenge to cope with, but Avery, the fetus you're carrying has substantial developmental abnormalities." "What abnormalities?" Avery asked in surprise. "Is the baby going to be okay?" Clearing her throat, Dr. Blair scooted her chair closer to the two women. "The liver is far behind where it should be for this stage of development. There's only one kidney. Well, there should of course be two. And while those items alone are very significant, the lungs are riddled with holes." "Holes?" Allison said in bewilderment. Avery sat speechless, gripping her mother's hand. "Regrettably, Avery," the doctor continued, "I'm afraid if you were to go through with the remainder of the pregnancy, the baby wouldn't survive more than a few minutes after birth." "How can you be certain, though?" Allison probed. "I mean, shouldn't we get a second opinion?" "Absolutely," Dr. Blair agreed. "I would insist, actually." Avery's mind spun. "Is there no surgery that could be done to fix the lungs?" "I'm afraid not," Dr. Blair affirmed. "They literally look like nothing I've ever seen before. I truly hate to say it, but this baby cannot survive without you, Avery." Compassion flooded the doctor's face as she looked at the two women squarely in the eyes. "My professional medical advice is for this pregnancy to be aborted. I'm so terribly sorry." Both Allison and Avery remained silent for a few moments, trying to process what they were hearing. For Allison, the news came as more of a blow than when she discovered Avery was pregnant. She had grown thoroughly excited to be a grandmother, regardless of the peculiar circumstances surrounding her daughter's pregnancy. She had been looking forward with eager anticipation to be able to hold that precious grandchild in her arms. But now, those noble aspirations were dissolving like a sandcastle to the waves. A kaleidoscope of emotions surged through Avery, ranging from sorrow and regret to relief and rejuvenation. But what remained was the guilt. Guilt for feeling at all relieved that her own life might finally go back to normal. Yet the prospect existed only because another life wouldn't actually come to fruition. Life could never go back to normal. Not after this. Either the phenomenon she carried in her womb would die for lacking the ability to survive after birth, or expire at the hands of medical intervention. Hopelessness seeped painfully through her veins as Avery came to the realization that no matter what happened, she would never be the same again.